Tata Motors in the 21st century, this was building and selling the world's cheapest car. For any strategy to rise above the level of mere technique, it must have a powerful and inspirational strategic intent, whether to animate an individual, or to inspire a corporation, or to fire the imagination of a nation. John F. Kennedy declared, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade." Strategic intent compels us to think about the future, the home we want, the career we want, the retirement we want. Without a powerful vision, effective strategy is non-existent. Strategy is one of those rare terms that can be used as a rhetorical garnish on our prose. It provides cachet and gravitas. Instead of mere plans for the weekend, we develop a strategy. Now, this is probably only natural since generals craft strategy. Smart people craft strategy. Well, we want to craft a strategy too. But what is it? And where did the term originate? When I put these questions to my students, they respond with answers within a narrow band. Well, strategy, it's a plan. It's a grand plan, an ultimate plan. We may think of it as a plan, but that would be too simplistic. It involves much more than simply eyeballing a set of facts and pulling an answer out of the hip pocket. It's a way of perceiving and of considering the future with our aims and our goals in mind. Planning is indeed part of strategy, but if it were just a plan, nothing would distinguish it from much of the mundane scheduling that virtually all of us do. A strategic plan is a way of dealing with a constantly changing environment, both responding to that environment to achieve our goals and attempting where possible to change that environment to our benefit. Sun Tzu offers us one of the most well-known examples of strategic theory in his opus, Art of War, which first appeared in the form that we know today approximately 2,300 years ago. Scholars argue over the identity of the author, but his work finally appeared at some point in the 3rd century BC. Sun Tzu's brilliance lies not in offering an explicit set of maxims for conduct of war, but in his recognition of the fluid nature of reality and how any practitioner of strategy must constantly and swiftly adapt to that reality. Our word strategy is derived from the Greek word strategos, which originally meant army leader. It was once the term for a military governor in ancient Greece. The term strategy did not appear in the English language for the first time until the early 19th century. Thanks to Napoleon and his wars, the 19th century saw a flowering of the concept of strategy in the Western world, with a series of publications by Antoine de Jomini, most notably his Summary of the Art of War in 1838. Jomini's contribution to strategic thinking lies in, first, his identification of interior lines of communication. For example, a family that lives together has clear interior lines of communication compared to a family where some members live apart. Second, his notion of concentration of force. Concentration of force in space and time as keys to victory in competition. Jomini's approach to strategy is like the calling of a play during a huddle. In fact, Jomini conceived of strategy as beginning from a kind of geometric precision. On the other hand, we have Clausewitz. Karl von Clausewitz disagreed with Jomini in important respects. He focused more on what the quarterback does after the huddle. A Prussian military officer who served on the opposite side of Jomini in the Napoleonic Wars, Clausewitz viewed uncertainty, chance, and probability as three forces of conflict, what he called friction. Thus, he called war the province of chance. It was a constant battle with the unexpected. To overcome this friction, he offered his famous and enduring advice on how to grapple successfully in competition, the notion of coup d'oeil, the French expression for the stroke of intuition and genius. This is the concept of the rapid and accurate decision that confers competitive advantage on the strategist who exhibits coup d'oeil. Together, these two Europeans, Jomini and Clausewitz, offer complementary positions for bringing strategy to bear on conflict. Jomini focused more on defining the best practices of his day. Clausewitz focused instead on how to think about what to do beyond the best practices of the day. Both are necessary, And the same sort of complementary emphasis on best practice versus going beyond best practice can be found in the business world as well. One of the most influential strategists of the 20th century was Sir Basil Liddell Hart, whose contribution was the concept of the indirect approach, a form of misdirection. This was the notion that we should never expend our energies with frontal assaults on an entrenched enemy. His theory was, of course, influenced by the ghastly trench warfare of World War I and its direct assaults across open ground. Hart insisted that instead of grinding our strength against enemy strength, we should seek interesting alternative routes to achieve our objectives. We should shroud our moves and intentions in mystery, and we should keep our competitors off balance and ignorant of our aims. His ideas were not so influential in Britain, but eagerly absorbed in Germany, which developed the Blitzkrieg. An example in business is the case of Swatch. This popular watchmaker developed a side business providing internal movements to manufacturers of Swiss-made luxury watches. Eventually, Swatch became dominant in the manufacture of these internal watch movements, and Swatch decided to cut off sales of those critical parts and reserve them exclusively for its own high-end watches. That's the indirect approach. We sometimes hear strategy used in conjunction with tactics. Sometimes the words are used interchangeably, but there is a difference. We tend to think of strategy as part of some higher realm of planning. Generals around sand tables, executives in the corporate suite, coaches in the film room, political candidates huddling with their advisors. The term tactics, on the other hand, yields images of squad leaders leading their troops to the objective, linebackers blitzing on third down, the marketing department rolling out a new ad campaign, candidates giving speeches, and workers collecting signatures. But strategy and tactics exist on a continuum, and whether we categorize an activity as tactics or as strategy is often simply a matter of where we are located on the hierarchy of action. My strategy may be part of someone else's grand strategy, and thus, from their perspective, my strategy becomes their tactics. But the distinction works for you as an individual as well. If your strategy is to become a doctor or lawyer, the courses you take are part of that strategy, but the ways you choose to study and prepare would be tactics. Similarly, Clausewitz distinguished between strategy and tactics by focusing on levels of conflict. In his words, just as tactics is the employment of military forces in battle, so strategy is the employment of battles to achieve the object of war. And so, we see that Clausewitz defined tactics as the use of engagements in the execution of the strategy. Each level of organizational activity requires strategic thinking and the tactical execution of that strategy. Tactics are the execution of strategy. And in the execution of a strategic plan on the battlefield, exigencies arise. The unexpected strikes us. The battle unfolds in ways that surprise us. These developments require reaction on the battlefield, improvisation, seizing of critical moments, the good sense to retreat, the strategic intuition to move left instead of right. This ability to react at the moment in the appropriate way is a part of strategic thinking that is as important as crafting a cool and deliberate plan before the fact. In all of these, the thinking remains the same, differing only in the scale of time and of space and of resources. Strategy encompasses well-executed tactics and cannot be divorced from it. Many a great strategic plan can falter because of a failure to recognize this crucial point. Moreover, strategic thinking does not end with the crafting and execution of a strategy. Strategic thinking means constant interaction with the environment during the execution of our strategy. For example, always treat with respect anyone you interact with. Successful strategy is dynamic, it is adaptive, it is opportunistic, and it depends upon the swift, bold, decisive, and crisp execution of tactics. Although many fundamental ideas about strategy were pioneered in thinking about war, strategic thinking has naturally extended itself into business, into politics, and into sports, where great organizations of all kinds, not just armies, require guidance of the sort that strategic thinking provides. Business has proven to be a very fertile area for the development of strategic theory. Harvard business professor Michael Porter almost single-handedly elevated strategic thinking to a new level of respect in the nation's business schools, beginning with his path-breaking work in the 1980s on competitive advantage, on competition, and on strategic thinking. Porter says that strategy means choosing a different set of activities to deliver a unique mix of value, doing things differently. For me, Porter's definition is seductive in an incredibly positive manner. Porter's